And we are live. Hello, Jennifer. Good morning. Good
Hello,
morning.
Jennifer.
Good morning
And
from
Bill.
tomorrow.
I think Bill joined there.
Yes, he did. Hello. Welcome. Welcome. It's lovely to see all of you on this Sunday morning here in California or Monday morning in Australia. The gang's all here. Spring is sprung. I was just talking to Kathy about forgetting to get my jasmine that's usually sitting in a pot right up there because the cats like to eat the petals when I'm not looking once it... anyway.
Yes.
I'm not sure how I can segue that into a hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Tian with Projectkin. And joining me today for this special Projectkin Live with her, was that a bunny mug, is Kathy Stone. Kathy will give us a little, gnomes, dressed gnomes, eggs.
Bunny gnomes.
Bunny gnomes. We have Easter coming.
Yeah.
Ahead of our Kathy's Corner coming up on Thursday this week. And as we do with each of these preview sessions, in addition to Pet the Kitty, do not bite me, you're making me look bad, is take a preview of what's coming. Good morning.
And good morning.
Lovely. Good evening. It's lovely to see you joining us. I hope just maybe the sun is still up for you up in the north of Scotland. It's lovely to see you. So now that we have circled the globe from Australia to Scotland, so tell us a little bit about what's coming, Kathy Stone.
Well, on Thursday for Kathy's Corner, we have a special guest again, and it's Jane Chapman. And what we're looking at, we actually could probably call this session Postcards Part 3, although we're going to talk about more than just postcards. But Jane has written about her treasure box, a box of things she inherited. And in there were some very old postcards and things that she's researched. So she's going to join me on Thursday, and we'll talk a bit about her treasure box and the postcards in it. And what I'm curious to know what research she did to find out the information she now has, because that's important too, and to know the how of it, and talk a bit more about that, of researching items we may have. But we're going to talk again. We talked a lot about paper items last month, and now we're going to talk more about some of the physical items, and again back to how to decide what to do with them, and where do we keep them, and what's an heirloom, because there are things that are, I think there are things you have that aren't necessarily called an heirloom. However, they're still valuable things. So I think it's important that we talk about and I think a lot of it derives from the stories behind them, which was what makes them, whether it's a quote, a family heirloom, because when I think of heirlooms, I think of like the crown jewels in England, and I've got
value over
antique,
the family.
Yeah, an antique piece of jewelry that's worth a lot of money, or things like that. I've got I've got this old, I was reading somebody has one of their heirlooms is a fine bone china set, and it's things like that become what becomes an heirloom. I have my grandmother's engagement ring, not probably worth a lot if it was appraised, but I think it would be considered an heirloom because of the time period. It's obviously from, kind of remember off the top of my head when they got married, but they got married sometime in the late 20s, before 1929 when they came to Canada. So that's now really old, and it's a treasure because we don't have many things. They didn't have a lot of things like that. So and I was thinking about it this morning, and I was looking around. As I don't know if I've ever mentioned this. I lived in Quebec, in a small town outside of Montreal, between Montreal and Ottawa. For those of you who, I think probably most people recognize Montreal and Ottawa, but I lived in a very small town, French town, and on weekends they would have outdoor, what we would call here a flea market, but the flea market down there was like an antique show. And so I purchased some antique furniture. I have a blanket box, I have an armoire, I have a couple barristers' bookcases. And I got thinking the other day, I thought, those are probably considered heirlooms now, because they were old when I bought them back in the 80s. And now here we are way later on. And so those are something I would consider heirlooms. And I think Anne's comment, different types of value, monetary, sentimental, memory rich, whole bunch of different categories. So that's what we'll talk about with Jane. And if anyone else can join us and would like to talk a bit about what they would consider treasures, I'll talk a little bit about how we might maybe build our own treasure box to pass
Mm,
on to our
yeah.
families, and like with pictures of our kitties on our live Zooms.
In all seriousness, or QR codes or access to
Yeah,
storage of stored digital items as
yeah,
well. I think that's a great point, Anne. Really thinking about types of value, it makes you think about how you're passing on that association. And of course, value, usually, especially with respect to antiques, varies a great deal
mhm,
over time. So even things like diamonds are not as valuable today relative to other things as they were before it was possible to basically manufacture diamonds. So the value, or things like gold or silver, are worth more and less depending
mhm.
on politics or other kinds of geopolitical things going on at any given point in time. Stories, however, I
Never
think
always
only
have value.
well, they even change, right? As
Yes.
reputations. We have, Cesar Chavez, big deal out here in California, but whoops, okay, Ixnay Chavez. You have political things that when information about the hero is revealed about who they really were or whatever
Mhm.
else, all of a sudden that value goes down.
Yeah.
And figuring out how to handle that as a family and those stories as a family is really
Mhm.
important. I hadn't even thought about it in the context of heirloom. At the end of the
Yeah.
day, there are, what I always love about the Kathy's Corner series is we back up from all of the storytelling strategies and narratives and researching tips and whatnot to really look at, hey, wait a minute, this is a physical object. This is a
Mhm.
physical thing. And if you put those fun handwritten postcards from that trip to London next to those daguerreotypes,
Yeah.
or the paper prints, you're in trouble. You
Mhm.
may not be, but your descendants will be. And
And I think it
understanding.
gets us thinking about how we make sure that our descendants or whoever the person is who's going to come death clean our house when we're gone knows what the items are. Like mine aren't stored away in boxes. My what I would consider my family heirlooms, and I've mentioned before many times, are probably my ship in a bottle that was made by German POWs in World War II at the
It's a
POW camp
great
just east of
example.
Calgary or west of Calgary in the mountains. But it sits in my one of my barrister's bookcases, which I love. If you know, those are the ones with the
I
glass
know the
fronts,
glassy.
yeah, that lift up, and I love them. So I have a couple of them, and that's in there. Also in there are two picture frames. One which sadly the glass is broken. That were also made by prisoners. They are little concave circle picture frames made out of shell casings,
Hmm.
which I have to check
Wow.
back into the story of that because I'm not sure why there would have been shell casings here. But anyhow, because we didn't have like it, but who knows? But anyway, and there I've got those that are in that case. I've got a little wooden shoe that just looks kind of it's a little like a trinket from Holland. Or the Netherlands now. It was Holland when it was collected. It was actually my grandfather brought it back at the end of the war from Holland when he escorted prisoners back and then had leave, and he had leave in Holland, and he got that for my grandma. So, but it just sits there, doesn't look like a whole lot. So it's important then the stories and also just the
Yeah.
identification of the items.
And even items that are don't appear to be worth a great deal of money
Yeah.
are one thing to associate the story with. I just realized I'm wearing my grandmother's class ring from college,
Hmm.
University of Kansas. It's just a little piece of silver. It doesn't look particularly. There's sort of a crest on it, and it's completely worn off. You have no idea. I don't actually know the fact. I know my mother told me it was
Yeah.
her mother's class ring, and the deal is she went to college, which, you know, in 1912 is a big deal, right? And
Mhm.
that's her picture there in red over there.
Yes.
In about the same year she graduated. Because then she went and got married, because that's what nice ladies do.
Yeah.
Um, but it's also important to document the stories behind things that don't appear that do appear to be valuable, because
Yes.
the family might not know that that's not just an investment. There was
Yeah.
sentimental value to
Mhm.
it. Maybe it's a
Yeah.
ring. Those tend to be pretty obvious to have been valuable, but artwork or,
Mm.
you know, various other kinds of things that the kids may not have appreciated just how valuable they are. And welcome, everyone. It's a delight to see so many of you joining, many familiar faces, many we see only occasionally, and it's lovely to see you. Please feel free to drop questions here. We have
Mhm.
a terrific expert, pardon the cat, a terrific expert in the preservation archivist with us, who has really gone through the experience of managing through everything from floods to the homes of wealthy dowagers, you know,
I'm
homes to
looking at the
sort
list
through
of people
collections.
wondering who is that? Who joined us? That's who's the expert that joined us? And I went, "Oh, maybe you're talking about me." Okay. Uh,
Oh, own it, Kathy, own it. So, but in all seriousness, feel free to drop questions right in there, because as we
yes.
go through here, thinking through these kinds of things helps you think about how you prioritize what to
Mhm.
tell stories about. And I think an important rule is don't assume they know, because yeah, the kids might have been there when that thing was, but they also
Mhm.
might have been, you know, 7 years old. And
Yeah.
what do I know? Mother of
And some
pearl? What is
things
that?
are obvious, but some things aren't. Like I've got when my cousin passed away, he being a boy had my grandfather's war medals. And when he passed away, his daughter gave them to me. She said, "I know these will be looked after by you." And so my sons, because they were adults at this time, they know that those are whose war medals they are. And again, something that's fairly easy to look up. But there's a lot of stories behind that. Like we've got Canadian ones from World War II and British ones from World War I, but the other things that are around that they may not know what they are, and that was, I think, the with the ship in the bottle, I had done a session, and I'll try and find the link to it, with, Marty McNabb at Show and
Yes.
Tales, and, that was what I talked about it, where we were doing a series on single objects that are of most important. What is the thing you would keep if you could only keep one thing? Which, for any of us here, that's just like an impossible question. So I just had to pick out I thought, "Well, let's pick out something that's kinda cool," 'cause, ridiculously, there is more than one thing that I would keep, but, um, when I after we did the recording a few years ago, and then she was posting it on her YouTube channel and wanted a photo of me with it, and I got my son to take a picture, and so he goes like so I said, "I need you to take a picture of me holding up the ship in a bottle," and he said, "Well, okay," 'cause, he'll do that, and he said he goes like, "What is that, mom?"
You're like,
And
oh
I'm
God,
like,
no, don't
Okay,
tell me. I didn't tell my own kid.
yes, exactly. I've missed out on telling those stories, and it's becomes very important. And those items, some of them, while they may seem rather innocuous and not of huge value, like I haven't looked up what eBay's selling ships in the bottle because there's no way I'd ever sell it. However, museums would like them.
Yeah.
And because it is part of history. So even here, my father was born in a town called Wainwright, Alberta, and they apparently had a POW camp in that area as well during World War II. And we went to a reunion and toured the museum, which is coincidentally in the old railway station. And both my father and grandfather were train engineers, so that was kind of cool. And there's a huge display of old telephones that my uncle donated to the museum. There's an entire room full of old telephones that my uncle collected. So I believe I've got that genetic thing of collecting stuff. But in that museum, on the section of the museum talking about the POW camp in Wainwright, was a ship in the bottle. And so I went, okay, I've got now evidence that obviously the museum wouldn't, hopefully the museum wouldn't put things in just based on stories that were passed down. So it's
Yeah.
so that was sort of confirmation that that we had that. So that's what that was, and it's deep. That's got to be written down. And
Well,
like you say,
because
you made a good point, Barbara, about priorities. So if I'm at the point now where I pretty well digitized everything except a pile of memorabilia, that's got to get done too. So I've got a few box loads of that still. But now that the photos are all preserved, they may not all have the stories. That's not done. Full disclosure,
ever
mine are.
done.
I'm not caught up and going sitting up eating bonbons now. But um, is it important now to make sure I get those items identified in some way? And I'll talk on Thursday about some maybe suggestions of how to, because I don't want to put them in a box with a card that says what they are. I want to leave them out in my living room and I want to enjoy them. But I
QR
need to
codes,
also, yeah, the QR code idea.
catalogs,
So
QR codes,
yeah.
or tags. I, separated things with my brother and sister after my mom
Yeah.
passed. And they are, just haven't been in a position to pick stuff up or, ship some things. But so I ran around the house with blue, colored
Mhm.
masking tape to stick on the bottoms. I haven't even gotten as far as QR codes, but yeah, just to take you never know where things are going to go. And it also reminds me, as we're talking, apparently both of us, um, uh, as we're talking, that there are things that I have collected. We have not, they call it an antiques fair once a month at the local former Naval Air Force. Former Naval Air Force Base. It's a giant runway. Still there, has the most amazing view of
Ooh.
San Francisco, right on the water. And there's a giant, instant antiques fair every year. And in order to be an antique, it just has to be 20 years old. So the line's pretty easy. And I would just go there with my daughters a lot of times and pick stuff up. And I started a collection of transferware because it's cheap and pretty. Transferware is a technique used starting really pretty far back in history in porcelain, where they would take an image that had been like etched and then transfer it to the platter, to the plate. So you see, like the willow pattern is a
Mhm.
classic of transferware. One of the things I found interesting was that the story behind the willow pattern is a very specific story of young lovers and
Mhm.
separated and that kind of thing. And it gets reinterpreted, not the same pattern, but it is the same story reinterpreted across multiple pieces. And I have French pieces and English pieces and Japanese pieces, and I have a couple of little plates from occupied Japan. So to me, if someone comes along and sees that and says, I don't know, they're just a bunch of dishes. No, it's not a bunch of
Yeah.
dishes.
Yeah.
It's a collection.
Mhm.
Please. Here
Yeah.
is the story of the willow pattern. Here is the Japanese one. Here is the French one. And here you can see from the mark. I mean, any collector would know this, and they're not worth a lot of money. I think maybe
Mhm.
$50. But, it means a lot to me for them to be kept together, even if they're just sold. Come
Mhm.
on, man.
Sell it as a set.
Sell it as a set, damn it. Um, That's why you buy things at antique shops, because the
Mhm.
shopkeeper is going to tell you a story. Going into an antique shop and they're going to say, yeah, it's a pot. No, come on, man.
Yeah. No.
I'm ready to pay a premium because you're going to tell me a story. I'm
Story
going to
hunter.
believe that the story is real because it's like gold embossed on your name out there.
Yeah. Yes. Well, and it's amazing the things you find. Like it's just in antique stores. I've had my and again, I've joked that I need to write on a bunch of pictures because I'm photo manager. I'm fascinated by the history of photography, and I have cabinet cards and carte de visite, and I got some daguerreotypes for my birthday last year. None of them are any of our family at all. They aren't, and so I need to somehow note that
Yeah.
this stack of my collection of photos are not ours. Like, don't start trying to figure out who the heck these people are in these cabinet cards because they aren't us. Then actually, you could pretty easily determine that they're German. It was that I found again in an antique store.
I put the word out pretty early on, doing what I do, that I was interested in old pictures because I was kind of a little tired of reusing my own family. And I came really close to that. Actually, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out who this one woman is before I remembered that it came
Mm-hmm.
from a collection because she really looks like one of my people.
Yeah,
And what are you gonna do? Um,
yeah.
yeah, no, it's uh, there's secret markets. It's not our people.
It's
So, I like to think about 30, 40, 50 years from now. There are some looking at our American 250th anniversary and our Stories 250, by the way, just a little plug, thinking 50 years from now, right? 2076, the 300th anniversary,
anniversary.
if we can keep it. Um, and really looking at how we aren't here and hopefully our kids are here, but they're our age or, well, actually a
Mhm.
generation even older than that. They are grandparents. What are the stories that they're telling to their grandchildren and great grandchildren and
About
people
this
we
era. Yeah.
about this era or about their own childhoods or, that span of time? In working on the Stories 250 project, I decided that it wasn't going to just be about that one date, July 4th, 1776, but really 50 years before and 50 years after. And frankly, in the process, and by the way, still open until June 30th, I was astonished to really see, in a way beyond textbooks, about how life was so different by the early 19th
Mhm.
century than it had been in the middle of the 18th century. Just yeah, technological differences, political differences, obviously, but how much life had changed. And the early 19th century was more about Napoleonic Wars than it was about the Age of Enlightenment, and that is really different
And eye opening.
and eye opening. Yeah, and so I suppose in some ways we're still dealing with that,
Yes. So
but let's not go
yes,
there.
well that's what's coming up this week. I don't know. What else have you got anything else on the go this week, Barbara, for us?
I think for
Are
Project
you taking a
Kids,
break?
what means break?
What's that thing?
Actually, I'm glad you mention it. I've often described myself as a ringleader because I feel like I'm spinning plates all over the place and then running
Mhm.
around. Well, I recently offered, actually during Roots Tech, I offered to all of the Projectkin patrons that if you have an event that you are organizing, let me put it on my calendar for you because I can do that easy. And you know what? If you're an active member, talk to me. I could be persuaded. And as it happens, our very first one will be Jennifer Jones, who is hosting an event on the 25th. That would be Wednesday here in North America and Europe. And actually, no, in Europe, it's already Thursday morning because it will be at 6 p.m. Here in California, which is, of course, 9 p.m. in our eastern side of the Americas, and out into we've already done daylight savings time, so 3 p.m. in Honolulu because hey, and then midday in Australia. So Jennifer Jones is starting a brand new series called Behind the Publication. And she is talking to Substack publication holders about their publications, what got them there, where they're going. And her first guest is none other than Carol McCullough. So that should be a fun series. And I'm excited about it because it really
Yeah.
kicks off a new series and a new way of doing things. I have a new special coming up in April. That is still, I can't remember whether we're final on the posting in the calendar or not. So I'm not even going to mention the details. So you can look and maybe it's there.
Oh, a
Stay
surprise.
tuned. A surprise. And I am working on a new series to come following the Stories 250. So for the listeners here, because I know you guys are insiders, it'll be after this Stories 250 series, which I have has been very, very gratifying. You know, we've done one live event once a month, but really the interesting part has been the amazing array of articles that have been written and shared together, both in the timeline, the map, and the page. We have 50 articles now up there. 2 more just came up. And now I'm going to do a magazine. I'm actually already working on it, going the other direction from digital to analog, because I think there's something very special about holding on to something. And yes, digital copies will also be available for everyone, but it is the kind of thing that helps us really realize that the stories that we tell will be important to our descendants. So I'm excited about that. So it's time for another theme. So what's more appropriate, it seems to me, after Stories 250 than stories of migrations? And these are not at all limited to North American migrations at all. It's about migrations all around the world. And I will continue to avoid politics because that's not what this is about. This is about our stories of how we got here, where our people came from, what that migration was about, how that's affected us, how our migrations will affect our descendants, and where we're headed. Because I just think that's such an important part of who we are. And I mean, even on the English, among the British Isles, I'm looking at you. I see you there. Even in the English Isles, you have the migrations that have been such an important part of Anglo-Saxon stories and storytelling, and the rest of it. And I think that's something that we can carry forward. So thank you, Mama Carol. That's very kind of you to say. But I know you have a story. I see you. We haven't even met, but you're right here in California. And I know you have some very important stories of where we are. I mean, here in the Americas, for example, it is such a large continent. And many of us have stories of arrival on the continent, where we came from on the continent, and then stories within the continent and where we come from. And my own story is as much about the many migrations I personally made in my own life. I think it was 10 schools by the 9th grade, something like that. 11th grade? I don't know. And it's, that how that changes us. And all of those things are important. Because I'm just here to get the stories told, right? That's what we're here for.
Exactly.
Now, stories, it turns out I was listening to something somewhere about how it's a trend. Storytelling is a trend. Who knew? We're just, we're just, we're passing
Ahead
through
of the
the
pack
edge.
here. Ahead of the pack.
Generation after generation ahead of the pack. But that's how it goes. So that's how we roll. And I want to thank everybody for joining us here on this Sunday morning. It's so good to see all of you, familiar faces, new faces, telling your friend faces. And we are taking it all forward and look forward to the stories that all of you will tell. And to joining you, of course, Kathy. Remember, Kathy's
That's
Corner
Thursday.
is is a on Zoom. We hold that on Zoom so that we can all join in and, talk to each other. And it is very
And
participatory.
yes, and by all means, if you've got an heirloom story, bring it
Or
along.
maybe a heirloom.
Or an heirloom, yeah. It's that Canadian accent coming through there. If you have an heirloom story, yeah, see, I should know better, so I'm of British descent, but, yes, I should be able to say heirloom better. But if you've got a short story or something, or by all means, participate because, as entertaining as I find myself, it could be quite boring listening to me for 60 minutes, so
Well, I will add that I think one of the things that made the whole topic of postcards come up
mm,
again and again was that spectacular program that you did in
yeah,
December about postcards. Because all of you, we had six speakers. The
yeah.
postcards are still up there, and I'll share with the notes. And it was amazing to see the interpretations of cards, everything from your own cards, cards your dad
Mhm.
brought in to have you think about, to postcards found in thrift shops, and all the ways in which those have been meaningful. And let's face it, they are a mere example of the parts of our collections. They're also easy to scan. Kind of special that way. All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's wrap this up. Thank you so
Mhm.
much, as always. Go ahead and drop your comments in the notes as well. The likes and such things help to gain visibility for what we're doing here. I will be beavering away, my favorite Canadian expression, right after elbows up, of course. After this, to update this with relevant notes and thoughts. If you have things you want to be sure I include, don't hesitate to
Mhm.
drop me a DM. I'll include it. And I'll get the notes out within a couple hours. I got to eat breakfast though. I got some hot croissants waiting for
Breakfast.
me up there. Yeah, it's waiting for me. All right. Talk soon then. Bye.
Bye.
Till
Thanks
next
for coming.
time. Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.